Hello everyone, it's the 14th of December and as you can hopefully see we have our Christmas tree up, but it's not Christmas yet. We're still in the season of Advent and we're still doing these Bible reflections. We haven't been able to post any videos for the last few days, but hopefully some of you have been keeping up with the readings anyway that we'd put up on the page. And what an exciting read Acts is. If you've never done it, I suggest you try reading the whole of Acts in one sitting or maybe a couple of sittings, because then you get the flow of this exciting adventure story that the first Christians experienced as the gospel spread across the known world. Just a little rider on that. Acts didn't happen overnight. In fact, it was a period of over 30 years probably. So it wasn't quite as everyday as it appears, but still it's an incredibly exciting story. This week, if we'd have done the videos, we'd have talked about the conversion of Saul, or Paul, on the road to Damascus, and his calling to preach to the Gentiles. We'd have looked at the Council of Jerusalem when the church worked out how it would welcome the Gentiles into its midst without them having to keep all the rules. It talks about, we looked at something of Paul's travels in Acts 16, and particularly how he how he was called to Macedonia by a vision, and then he went to Philippi, where he met with Lydia, and then Paul and Silas ended up in prison, but they were set free very dramatically by an earthquake that happened in the night. All very exciting stuff. And I was just thinking about it when I went for my dog walk this morning, and I was thinking, what is it that brings those stories together? Well, I think in the book of Acts we see the Holy Spirit working through the first followers of the way, the first Christians. And we see how the Spirit guides. Paul never went anywhere, and Peter never went anywhere unless the Holy Spirit was telling them to. And very clearly we see that in the story of how Paul is called to go to Macedonia, but there are other instances. So the Spirit guides them. The Spirit empowers them. Quite often a miracle happens. Somebody is healed. Occasionally someone is even raised from the dead. And people are interested. They want to know what's going on. What is this power at work? What is this message these people are proclaiming? And Paul and Peter and the other disciples are able to talk about the fact that Jesus is Lord and Jesus has risen from the dead and God's kingdom is beginning to come now on earth as it is in heaven. And that leads me on to the third thing, that actually they have a gospel, they have good news to proclaim, and they'll proclaim it wherever they are. Whether they're travelling, whether they're in prison, whether they're on trial before judges, wherever they find themselves, whether they're shipwrecked on an island, as we get in the story today. We're in Acts 28 today, and it's a very exciting story about how Paul and his companions, on their way to Rome, Paul to make his defence before the emperor, they're shipwrecked, and they land on Malta. And then Paul gets bitten by a snake, but he just shakes it off. And the islanders go from thinking, well, he must be a criminal because this snake's going to kill him, to thinking he must be a god. But if you notice, Paul also heals someone. He goes to the governor's house, and the governor's father excuse me, is ill in bed. And Paul puts his hands on him and he heals him. And then they go off to Rome, and Paul is under house arrest in Rome, and yet he invites all the leaders, local Jewish leaders, to come to his house, and he preaches the gospel to them, and he preaches the gospel to the guard on the door, we find out from his letters. So it is amazing. Wherever Paul is, he shares the good news of Jesus. So I don't know where you find yourself today. You may be in a very difficult place. You may not be well. You may have friends or family who haven't been well, or you might have even lost a loved one during this time. You might find yourself at work You might find yourself furloughed. You might have lost your job. You might find yourself going to school today. You may find yourself in a situation of high pressure, or you might be bored. You might be with lots of other people, or you might be struggling to make contact. Wherever you are, the Spirit is with you. Ask the Holy Spirit to guide you. What does He want you to do today? Ask Him to empower you. How can you see the work of God? We can't control God's power, but we can ask Him to work in and through us. We can pray for our friends. And finally, can you share the good news with someone today? Maybe on the phone, maybe on the internet, maybe just someone you meet walking down the street, maybe someone at work. Can you share the good news that Jesus is the King and He loves us, and He came to us at Christmas, on that very first Christmas. He came to save the world. He came to love us. He came to bring us to life. Thank you for listening. See you tomorrow, maybe. Bye.